Hey fantasy fans, it's Dan here with TreeBeard Book Reviews. Finally getting back to the Discworld. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Thief of Time. Let's get into it. Alright guys, well welcome back. Finally get to do another Discworld review. Thief of Time is the 26th Discworld novel. I believe 26. This one is the fifth book, last book in the Death series. So if you like my channel and you like the reviews I'm putting out, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out. It helps that algorithm kind of keep chugging along. And so yeah, really excited to talk about this one. I'm going to be kind of doing a mixed spoiler-free review. I'll say if there's any spoilers, just because this is the it's the 26th book in the Discworld Universe, the fifth book, sorry, in the Death series. So we're quite into the Discworld, and you could start here, but it'd be a really bad place to start in the Discworld. So I think it's fine to have some spoilers here, guys. So let's talk about the plot of The Thief of Time, and then we'll get into what I liked, what I didn't like, and then kind of my end thoughts and maybe wrapping up the Death series, what I thought about the Death series, and my overall rating for The Thief of Time. So let's get into that. Thief of Time. Okay, so what's happening? So this is set, I believe it's a few years now after the Hogfather, so the last Death book. You still have your main players in this book. So you got Death, obviously, Susan Sto Helit. And then you get introduced to some new characters. So Lutze. Well, Lutze you've met before. You've met him in Small Gods. I haven't done a review of Small God yet, but I have read it. And then you meet Lobsang, you meet Jeremy, and you meet, what's her name? Lady Lejean. And also the Auditors are back too. That's kind of a running theme with the Death books, is the Auditors are kind of just mucking about with stuff. And, the Auditors have been messing around with stuff since Reaper Man. So I believe the Auditors were really involved in, Reaper Man. And then I guess, were they in Soul Music? I can't remember if they were in Soul Music. I don't think they were. They weren't in Soul Music. Then it was the Hogfather they were for sure in. And then now Thief of Time. So, yeah, it's just the Auditors causing trouble again. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to create another clock to stop time, which would then bring order to the universe, because humans wouldn't be in it, and the universe would be free to just go about the rest of its business. Or, well, it wouldn't be, because time would be stopped. So time would be stopped, there'd be no chaos kind of happening for the Auditors, and they'd be happy. So that's essentially the basic plot of the book, where this clock, that is going to be, has been commissioned by one of the characters, Jeremy, who is a clockmaker. He was left on, when he was a child, like a baby, left on the steps of the Guild of Clockmakers. He's the most skilled, talented clockmaker that have ever existed in the Discworld. And he's being charged by Lady Lejean to build a glass clock that would stop time. And so then this is where the other kind of big players come into play. So Death sees this as the end of the universe. This is the apocalypse. So Death, being Death, he kind of enlists Susan to go and help him in a roundabout way, where he says, yeah, well, I guess I'm going to kind of ask you to help me, but you don't need to, but you probably should, kind of thing. Death of Rats, then he played a really minor part. And then, so Death sees this as the apocalypse, the end of time. So, Death is actually one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, if you don't know. So Death is going out to recruit the other three horsemen to join him to do one last ride out for the apocalypse. And then that really leads into these other characters you meet, who are monks of history. So Lobsang and Lutze. Lobsang is an apprentice. He was a former member of the Thieves Guild. He was dropped on the steps of the Thieves Guild, and they said, okay, well, you're going to be a thief. And he was trained as a thief, and then he was found by one of the monks of history and saw that he was very talented at manipulating time and being embedded in time. And so he was recruited to become a monk of history, who he has excelled at being that. And then you meet Lutze, the sweeper. Lutze, among the history monks, is like this mythical figure, kind of like what's the, oh, to compare him to? He's like a hero like figure to them. Like everyone kind of like, oh, Lutze's done this. He's like kind of like a culture hero in a sense that he represents a lot of things. And since he's so old and these monks of histories can manipulate time, a lot of his stories kind of get embellished and misremembered and retold, and he just kind of made out to be this amazing like person. But you know, since they're so old and they just, you know, he wanders around now as a sweeper. He just pretty much sweeps up stuff in the monastery, and they don't really realize he's Lutze. So they have a long lives, short memories in a sense. These monks of history. And so these monks of history, they're kind of outside of time, too. So they're like the gatekeepers or the guardians of time, where they're making sure there's almost like a sacred timeline in a sense that, you know, time is winding up and winding down properly. And obviously, with the creation of this clock, this glass clock, that's going to have some big problems for them. And so this will be the second time, though, this clock would have been made. The first clock was an imperfect creation. The second clock, made by Jeremy, who is the best clockmaker in the world, will, you know, hopefully make a much better clock. And so that's really the basic plot without kind of going into any spoilers. It's a spoiler-free way of talking about it. This is a really interesting book. So Susan is in it. Susan is, you know, doing her normal Susan things, like kind of acting like Death, because Death's out of the picture again. He's kind of gone MIA to collect the other horsemen to start the apocalypse. So he's not really around. And Susan is kind of acting like Death, not doing Death's duties, but she's, you know, kind of doing his bidding because he cannot, because there's a lot of places he can't interfere. Like he can't interfere in this where the monks of history are. So they're outside of time, and just like him, they can't be touched by Death. So yeah, it's a very interesting book. So let me kind of break it down now into the things I liked and that I didn't like about The Thief of Time. Okay, so I'm going to kind of mix the good and the bad here. I'm going to do a bit of both. And just kind of rhyme it off while I'm talking about it. So the first thing I'm going to say is probably a bad thing, is a negative, is this one was actually a little hard for me to understand. There's a lot of things kind of going on, and I don't think it was a lot of things were explained in a very clear way that helped me picture it in my mind, like the procrastinators and like the drums that kind of wound down time and stuff like that. It was kind of very hard to picture and kind of understand what was going on. But like all the stuff with the monks of history was really cool. You know, there's the one thing with the abbot, where the abbot just keeps getting reincarnated because he's not been good at manipulating time to extend his life. He was bad at that, so he would just be reincarnated. So the new abbot was like a baby, like a toddler. So he was like, you know, pooping in his diaper or like asking for biscuits and stuff like that, while he was talking to like Lutze and Lobsang. So that's one thing I want to talk about too, is like Lobsang and Lutze. These guys are really good characters. Like Lutze's like this wise old master, you know, he walks, never runs kind of thing, where he's just, you know, just like this. He's almost like a Jedi in a sense, where he's like this. He's reached the kind of pinnacle he can reach, and he has this really competent apprentice who's really a quick learner, a quick study, but he's keeping him at bay to make sure he doesn't overstep and get hurt or hurt himself or break time. So, but he realizes, you know, Lobsang is really skilled, and he is giving him a little bit of rope. But there's a lot of funny gags in this stuff with them. Like, there's like one monk they meet who's kind of like Q from like 007, who gives gives them like a gadget. It's really funny. And if you don't know James Bond, you wouldn't get the joke, but it was really cool. And I remember talking to the Discord, I'm like, this is like James Bond. And like, yeah, you're right. So, no, I really enjoyed Lutze and Lobsang. I will say with Susan in this book, she was a little stagnant for me in this book, Susan. She felt a little drier, a little bit more boring, a little bit more wooden. She did have some funny bits, but Susan kind of lost a little bit of her charm with me, and maybe it's just because she's now like a fully grown adult. She's a teacher. She's very serious. She's very stern. And there's a lot less playfulness from Susan in this book. But then it did kind of come out a little bit once like time stopped, and you know, she's running around like throwing chocolates in these and the auditors must. So the auditors assume they've taken on human bodies, and they start living, and it's really good. This section of the book, the last section of the book, is really good, where time's frozen and the auditors are in these human bodies, and they're killing them with like ballistic chocolate, which is hilarious because, you know, they're new to being human. They're new to having sensory organs, and you know, you taste chocolate for the first time, it just blows the back of your head off, and it was killing them. So that was really hilarious. Lady Lejeune was really good. So she was actually an auditor in human form, and she was like the leader of the auditors, I think it was mentioned, because she was like the oldest of the first one, and so she was experiencing life, and eventually began to love life and wanted to remain a human. And she fell not in love, but she had like a click. She had like a little romantic connection with Jeremy, and she, you know, she wanted to explore it a little bit more. And so she was just thoroughly enjoying being human, and she was actually delaying Jeremy in creating this clock. So yeah, she was really good, and she played a great role at the end, like with Susan and Lobsang and Lutze, to try and stop the other auditors. It was good. It was really good. So some other negatives, I thought Death was barely in it. Death was like a footnote in this book, even more than the other books. I think Death, yeah. This felt like soul music a little bit with where how absent Death was. Like, he had some really good conversations with Susan, as he always does, but there wasn't a lot of Death here, where he's going down to track down the other horsemen of the apocalypse, like pestilence, famine, and war. And they were okay. You don't see much of them. Usually Death is very philosophical. He has a lot of one-liners and a lot of stuff that kind of sums up the book, and I don't think Death had that in this book. Death, I felt like fell a little flat for me in this book, but other than that, it was pretty good. So the last thing I want to talk about was a little bit of a minor negative, and it just made it hard to read, was Igor. I really liked the character of Igor. He was funny and he had some interesting bits, but Christ, he was hard to read. Just in terms of the way he speaks, or all of his S's were replaced by THs, and it slowed me down in reading it, and it kind of pulled me out of the story a little bit. I think it'd be better on like an Audible read, because it'd be just funny. But yeah, like, I wasn't a super big fan of reading all of Igor's bits, but other than that, he was pretty good. And I think the ending in this book was amazing. Like the final end of the book, where time has frozen and all the auditors are running around, and it's almost like a Die Hard mission, like where Susan and Lopsang and Lutze are running around with Lady Lejeune. They're like killing the auditors, and it was really good. And you felt the tension. Like, I felt really tense, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this book in the end. And I guess that's gonna, you know, go to my overall rating of the book, is where I would rate The Thief of Time. I would rate it a 4, like a straight 4. Very good. Probably not my favorite of the Death books. Probably not my least favorite either. Soul Music is probably still my least favorite of the Death books. So if I were to rank all the Death books now that I've read them all, it would be Hogfather as number 1, Reaper Man, Mort, Thief of Time, and then Soul Music. So, and then now, just kind of get, like, what do I think of the overall Death series? I think the Death series was really, really good. There's a lot of, and it's mainly because of the supporting characters, and the main supporting character of Susan Sto Helit and Mort. So that family, like the Sto Helit family, really liked them. Really loved Susan, really loved Mort. Death, again, is not really, he's not really in them, but like, I get that, because, you know, Death is one, and I think Terry Pratchett really realized that. Death is a great secondary character. He's an amazing secondary character. So even in his books, he kind of needs to stay a secondary character, because he serves that function. It's almost like the Minion movie. I think I've referenced this before, where, you know, the Minions were really good in Despicable Me, but then when they made the Minion movie, they fell flat, because they're meant to be secondary characters. They're never meant to be primary first characters, or like protagonists, right? They're not supposed to be the main focus. And I think Terry was really smart doing, you know, making Death a secondary character, even in his books, because he's there for the philosophical kind of background, like, ambiance, where, like, you know, Death is always kind of there, and he's always going to kind of come in and swoop in and save the day. but he's got like this heart of kind of gold, and he's always striving to be human. And I think this is where a lot of these books are. It's Death always striving to be human. So in like the first one, and more like he took on an apprentice, and he's looking to relax and take a break a little bit. And then in the second book, Death has been retired. He's he's reached the end of his rope, where the auditors want him out, and he's gone, and he's enjoying his retirement before he dies, and he gets collected. And then Soul Music, Death is dealing with some things. He's a bit depressed, and he's having kind of a breakdown. He needs to go find himself, and then in Hogfather, Death is triumphant. Death is taking on other roles and making sure that humanity stays human, and that humans have belief, and they have a thing to believe in. And so that's why I love Death and Hogfather the most. And now this one, Death he's fulfilling his duty of being a part of the apocalypse. So again, I know this has been a bit of a longer review, guys. Overall, really enjoyed Thief of Time. I've really enjoyed the Death series. It's probably not my favorite series of the Discworld. I really love the Witches of Loncra. Just love Granny Weatherwax and Antioch. I really like Guards, and like the Guards, the City Watch, Sam Vimes. So I think for me, the Death series is good, but it's probably gonna be a little bit lower on my my overall like. So I think what I'm going to be doing is, like, once I've done the full Discworld, I'll be doing like a tier ranking list and rank every kind of book and stuff like that. But that's still like ways off. We got a long way to go. So yeah, guys, that was my review of The Thief of Time. Really enjoyed it. I always loved the Discworld. Loved Terry Pratchett. And I think this one might do better if I read it all, when I reread the Discworld in chronological order. So that's it for me, guys, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.